Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this EBRA cluster interview series. EBRA is, as you know, the European Brain Research Area project funded by the European Commission. The project comes to an end this year. One very important aspect of the project was the various clusters or groups of people working together on specific brain-related topics and deep diving into those topics. And this is what this interview is about. We'll be talking to one of the clusters in a few minutes. My name is Franz Nivel, and I'm the Chief Communications Officer of eBrains. eBrains is the brain research infrastructure created by the Human Brain Project. And as such, we are a member of the EBRA consortium. And joining me today are the members of the TRISOMY 21 cluster, focusing on disorders of the developing brain. And I'm very happy to be welcoming Mara Dearson from the Center of Genomic Regulation from Barcelona, and Marie-Claude Potier, Director of Research at the French National Center for Scientific Research, the CNRS, who co-led the cluster and the working group on Trisomy 21. And I'm very happy for them to join me on screen now. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being with us today. Just to get started, Mara, the Trisomy 21 cluster was a bit of a special cluster. What was the purpose of such a cluster within EBRA?
So the Trisomy 21 cluster, funded in 2020 by EBRA, is a 2-year networking action that aims to establish a collaborative framework of coordinated actions to really put Down syndrome in the European research agenda, and boosting also new challenges and new actions that may help go beyond the limits that we now have in the Down syndrome research field.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Very ambitious and very promising purpose and goal. And for this, Marie-Claude, I guess the cluster was made up of people coming from different backgrounds then.
Yes, exactly. Coming from different backgrounds, from fundamental research to clinical research, and coming from different countries from Europe. And in fact, it was initiated following another network that we started with Mara about maybe 10 years ago, which is called the Down syndrome cluster and network from the European College of Neuropsychopharmacology. And there we already had a Down syndrome network. And what we wanted to do through the EBRA network was really to question how far we could go with the European tools, the European infrastructures, and to see whether we could foster research on Down syndrome and get more visibility and more sharing of data, facilitate the clinical trials and so on. So what we really wanted to do is kind of have all the information on all the tools we could use at the European level.
Okay, so yes, so connecting with the tools, the European tools, the research infrastructures, did you manage to get, the network that you wanted to have? Did you have the opportunity to work with research infrastructures? Mara, maybe?
Yeah, so this was part of our, let's say, mission there, right? So we had several meetings with different stakeholders, And there, of course, infrastructures, but also registries and also clinical networks were a very important part, even though we also had, of course, industry and founders involved, right? But the main idea was to really try to understand what the different infrastructures could bring to the Down syndrome research field and what were the needs of the Down syndrome research field. And of course, we are talking mainly about infrastructures providing not only the opportunity of data sharing and data management, but also biorepositories, also registries, etc. And in fact, it was interesting because we really met and had in-depth discussions with them. But we feel from our meetings that the infrastructures are kind of still not there in terms of providing the services to the research community, independently of Down syndrome in general. So some of them are kind of a little more advanced, but we identify, and we will report this, of course, many opportunities for improving and many challenges to face.
Okay, but that's extremely interesting. If you could, maybe Marie-Claude, can you give us a few examples of challenges or maybe shortcomings that you encountered, working with or getting in touch with research infrastructures?
Mm-hmm. Yes, as Mara was saying, one of the first activity of our EBRA cluster was to define research on Down syndrome, and this is exactly what we did with the help of researcher, but also industry people and so on. And once we had done that, we organized, Mara organized a very nice meeting in Barcelona where we could have many of the European infrastructure coming and presenting, as well as the people from the US that were connected and that also participated, just to not as to make a comparison, because we all know that research on Down syndrome will also benefit from international collaboration. But in order to get this international collaboration, we need to get organized at the European level, because what was obvious is that research on Down syndrome in Europe is quite strong. And if you think about the clinical trials that are going on right now, there are many clinical trials going on in Europe, so we need really to get organized. And when you discuss with these people running the clinical trial, they always come to us because we are known in the field, but we still need to get this better organized to allow more people coming into the field. And I would give one example. For example, through European collaboration that we are now working on, we are producing these human induced pluripotent cell lines, IPSs, that we wish to give also to the community, and that anybody working on Down syndrome could use these cell lines. Why? Because they are very well defined. They are associated to individuals with Down syndrome for whom we have a lot of clinical data. So what we need now is to make the community profit and benefit from all this research. And it's kind of an issue in Europe, because if you want to kind of match the consent of the people who have given their cells with the requirements of the cell banks, then it's kind of an issue. So we need to sort out all these issues, and we need to be able to better share all this very precious material, costly, also taking a lot of time. So this is one example, but I think maybe Mara could present some other example that we identified, for example, the clinical registries. we had very interesting discussion with clinicians during this meeting. And
yeah,
Mara, maybe you can.
Yeah, for example, we identify things like, for example, in some infrastructures, there are still not well-defined clinical hierarchies or metadata. It's something that in the end depends on the research group that is willing to use this infrastructure.
And the disease. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, this limits quite a bit the possible uses of those. There are also no coordinated registries. There is some registries out there, but they are not really organized. The biobanking and the biosample availability is terribly scattered. So if you start a project on Down syndrome and you need brain postmortem material, for example, it is really terribly difficult to identify where this material is, if it is associated or not to clinical data. So this is something that the Down syndrome research community is really having to build up from scratch, right? Because we cannot, unfortunately, get the support of the existing infrastructures. And this is something that is very difficult to lead from the research side, because it cannot depend on single people, single projects, single networks. So everything is finally built up from scratch by us as researchers. And this is a lot of time, a lot of investment. And this is what the infrastructure should help to, no?
Absolutely.
Yes. And yes, and what we realized, for example, for the clinical registries, we discussed with the European infrastructure, and what appeared is that they cannot really provide help, I mean, in terms of human power, to help us fit our registries with their registries. So, and this takes a lot of time, and this you really cannot ask the clinician to do it, because they are already very busy and so on. So we really need to sort out, and I think they all agreed that they would like to participate, but they need manpower, and these registries, they don't have the manpower. So it's kind of difficult to know how to adapt, because some of the tools are there, but it's more like the manpower that is really missing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, no, I that's very true. I think that's I think a major issue in Europe for a lot of brain-related disorders, is that there is a wealth of data, but the problem is we cannot really derive the value of that data, because it is scattered, because it's not interoperable, because it's not necessarily allowing you to compare apples with apples, because people deal with data in different ways. So there's definitely a need for better data management in order to leverage the data in scientific progress, and so that's very true, and that's a very good, strong signal that you are sending to the community.
Yeah, and in fact, in the United States, they have now invested quite a high amount of money in organizing an infrastructure for data sharing and data repositories for Down syndrome. And we are now trying to really coordinate with them, because in the end, as Marie-Claude was saying, it should be at the international level. I mean, we have to organize things in Europe. We have to harmonize things. This is also a big issue here, right? And besides, we really need to collaborate with the rest of the world, especially for disorders that are not such frequent, even though Down syndrome is the most frequent, let's say, intellectual disability, genetic cause of intellectual disability, and is a genetic cause of Alzheimer's. So we can also kind of coordinate with the Alzheimer's disease community, right, in terms of research. But you need investment, and you need, as Marie-Claude was saying, you need manpower, and you need to organize things, to coordinate things, because there are many infrastructures, but it's not clear what is the added value for them, for the scientific community.
No, I fully agree. I mean, this is definitely something very, very important. But so, well, thank you very much. I mean, these are very clear, strong messages towards, the community needing to get organized into better data management. Now, in terms of other findings from your cluster work, are there other elements that you would like to put forward? What did you learn? Are there other elements that came out of that collaboration?
In fact, there were several conclusions. It's a bit too long, maybe, to go through everything.
The main ones, maybe.
Yes, but so at various levels, we were finding opportunities on one side, and I think it was very interesting to see that industry, which is now kind of starting to move, is not aware of the big opportunities that Down syndrome is providing for them, right? Not only in terms of direct treatment of the Down syndrome intellectual disability, but also in terms of, for example, tools that may help also for Alzheimer's disease, right? Then in terms of innovation, I think that also Down syndrome is providing a lot of interesting tools and ideas for innovative biomarker research, for example, biofluid markers, not only for cognitive alterations, but also for preventing and predicting Alzheimer's disease. And there are very interesting projects. We have now several projects ongoing that are really using innovative tools to provide longitudinal data. So this, I think, will change profoundly the field of Alzheimer's disease and Down syndrome, and will provide personalized medicine tools. And this is part of our projects, ongoing projects. On the other hand, we also identified different opportunities at the clinical level. There are already clinical trial networks that grew up from the researchers. But of course, if this could be coordinated at the European level, this would be an amazing opportunity. And regarding the facilitating the fair, the findable, accessible, interoperable data sharing is something that we are already working in different kind of groups, in Down syndrome. So I think that there are a lot of opportunities, and we are very convinced that Down syndrome is a field that we have to invest, because it's plenty of opportunities, it's plenty of research, ambitious projects, and I think that if we could really build these, let's say, highly connected research community with very good connections, and I think our cluster helped a lot in that, with infrastructures, with industry, with other stakeholders. This, I'm sure it will make a big difference.
Well, thank you very much. Now, and forgive my ignorance, but maybe for the people who will be watching this this video, you seem to make a very strong connection between Down syndrome and Alzheimer's disease. Mm-hmm. Can you or Marie-Claude elaborate a little bit on this? I mean, how can we link the two? And what kind of evidence do we have today about this?
I mean, we know since a long time that one of the main pathology of Alzheimer's disease, which is the amyloid pathology, is coming from the gene which is mapping to human chromosome 21. So in fact, individuals with Down syndrome, they have 3 copies of this gene, and we know they produce more of this pathology like very early in life. And it's a huge risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. In sporadic Alzheimer's disease, not all the people who have this pathology will develop Alzheimer's disease. But in Down syndrome, it's like you would have this pathology much earlier, and this is a huge risk factor. And because this population now, they live older, because we can detect cardiac malformation that they used to have, like in 40% of them, and they get surgery, so they live longer. And then what appears is that you see that they get a high risk of Alzheimer's disease, of dementia. So this is really a population which is at high risk, and that really benefit from all the treatments aiming at treating and preventing Alzheimer's disease. So I think it's a condition that is allowing to learn a lot on these early steps of Alzheimer's disease. But we were discussing about Alzheimer's disease, but let's say there are other comorbidities, and one of our main European projects that was into the age 2020 is to study other comorbidities such as obesity and cognitive function. So I think we also can learn a lot from these people, because although they have comorbidities, some of them are somehow protected, like you would see for the Alzheimer's disease condition. Some of them are not at the same level of Alzheimer's disease. So you can also learn how to be protected from a comorbidity also, because they are all different. So it's a condition which is fascinating for us, but for research, and we have been working all together through these European grants, H 2020, and also GPND for the neurodegenerative disease, and we learn a lot. And for example, for GPND, we had 2 huge grants where we went all over the place to get human material, human brain samples, and so on. And now we know how to organize all these brain bank, European brain bank. We know where all the samples are. So we need really to kind of build some registries for future research, because in order to get people coming into this field of research, we need to facilitate the work, and we have been working hard, so it's better to help the young people coming into the field.
But as Marie-Claude said, it's fascinating because, for example, the people with Down syndrome have less prevalence of solid tumors. And this is probably driven by the fact that there are some protective elements in chromosome 21 that, when triplicated, are reducing the risk of solid tumors, no? So it's there's some more prevalent comorbidities and some are less. So it's a real opportunity.
Yes, well, fascinating, as you say. I mean, yes, it opens a whole new world of potential research and exploration, which is so needed. Yeah. So thank you for this. Now, I understand that as a kind of summary work of the cluster, you're going to publish a consensus paper. Mm-hmm. Can you maybe summarize what the main messages are in this consensus paper and when it's going to be made available?
So we are still working on it. The idea is to summarize what we have discovered, right? So mainly what we will delineate is what is the status of Down syndrome research in Europe, where we are, but also where do we want to go, right? And we hope to also provide a clear vision of what is available, as Marie-Claude was saying. So probably, not probably, including the places to go, where to go to find brain banks that do have Down syndrome material, what is out there in terms of registries, etc. And we have mentioned these two clusters, the ECNP cluster, so the ECNP network is called in ECNP, but also the Trisomy 21 cluster. And in fact, those are both connected to the Trisomy 21 Research Society, of which both Marie-Claude and myself were founding members, and we have been working for the community since its creation. And this society is also part of how the cluster will continue in the future, right? So all the effort done by our cluster and by our network will have a continuity because in the Trisomy 21 Research Society, there is a clinical research committee and the preclinical research committee. So both of them are continuing our work, for example, as Marie-Claude was saying, trying to identify where are the iPSCs derived from Down syndrome population, and provide this information to the whole community.
Thank you.
Yes. And in fact, we have seen, with Mara, we presented the EBRA network at the last Congress of this International Society on Trisomy 21 Research Society. And we have seen that the American community was very much interested. And they were very keen on really just reading the slide that we made that just states the research in Europe and what we miss and what we need. And there were a couple of people from biotech company and small pharma that were very much interested in helping. And they really understood what we were saying, and we were quite happy to see that all these people can really help. And I mean, I hope they will at the end, but I think the message was quite clear, and they were saying that yes, if you don't have that, it makes things more complicated. So we need really to go forward and to really get what we wish to have for us and for the future. And I think it's very important because the way research is going is getting very connected, very ambitious. So we need to help.
But that's I think a fantastic way to end this nice interview. Thank you very much for making the time. I think the good thing is the work continues, and plenty of opportunities are presenting themselves. So we need to make sure that they are seized, by the various stakeholders. But it's very, great to see that you have made things, progress, open up, new collaborations. So congratulations to you and all the network. And best of luck, with the next steps. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so this is the end of this interview. Just as a reminder, the EBRA final conference will take place on October the 11th. This will be the opportunity to discuss, the overall findings and results of the project, including discussions on the various clusters during the EBRA project. So looking forward to potentially meeting many of you there. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.